Hello, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about land ownership. So, I don't know if anybody's had a lot of chances to think about land ownership, but if you take the time to think about it, it is an interesting topic because land ownership, first of all, implies that we can own land in the first place, which, of course, land doesn't really belong to anybody. And also, if we think about it in the context of homelessness, if we have land ownership that takes away rights to free land where people can live if they don't have a home. So, for example, obviously you can't squat on someone's personal property, and that makes some sense because you have, your rights to the things that are yours. You wouldn't want someone stealing things from you. And so, in the same way, you don't want people using the land that you've earned and paid money for. But at the same time, you have a homeless population that needs somewhere to live. And if you had free land that was owned by nobody, then those people could become campers, basically. And you do have land where, like a lot of van life people, they go take advantage of a lot of land that has been logged previously, and now you can go live out there and hike out there, and nobody's going to stop you. But let's say you don't have anywhere to live and you don't have a financial income, then all of a sudden living off the land becomes necessary. And so that includes sleeping and eating. And so one thing that I'm pretty sure you can't do, especially not year round, is just go hunt in crown land in parks and stuff. So you might be able to go sleep in your car there, or maybe actually tenting I think is still pretty frowned upon in most places, unless you have some sort of permission. Although, and there's certain places where in the bush they don't care. But if you're far enough into the bush where they don't care, then you are also far enough away from civilization that it's hard to get out there and live out there without a vehicle. So let's say you have no financial income, you have nowhere to live, and you also don't have a vehicle to get out to these places. Then you can't just go from the city and walk into the bush a couple kilometers and hunt and fish and do these things just kind of off the cuff to try and survive. You're not legally allowed. And there are certain situations, like there's a guy who lived in, I think it's called Stanley Park in Vancouver. He's lived there for a long time. There's a YouTube thing about that. And nobody has ever kicked him out of the park. And there's a guy, a rock climber in, I think, Germany. He's lived in this park for a long time. He's technically homeless, but he takes care of the park. And so he's lived there and he climbs and he hangs out with the other climbers there. And he's sort of part of that community. So there are niche situations where people do it anyways, but it's not necessarily smiled upon, I suppose. So this brings up a situation where you have homes where people live, you have homelessness that lives around these homes, and then you have land that is owned by the government, and it's free for everyone to use, but you can't live there, and so you take away that resource. And then there's also, not that I know of, a ton of like easily accessible resources to teach homeless people how to live off the land safely and without ruining that environment, spreading garbage and stuff like that. So some education, some free land, and maybe free camping spots, and some sort of service to teach people how to live off the land, especially in the spring, summer, and fall when things are still growing, would help out the homeless population and take them, I guess, from like being homeless, potentially, this is maybe narrow-minded of me, from being homeless to being like a traveling group of people who they don't have a home per se, but they are allowed to legally travel around and live as a traveling troupe of some sort. And there are people who, like, I believe it's in Nepal, where I don't know if this is the case anymore, but I know they used to be able to just have herds of animals and grow crops, and it was fairly free range, I suppose, where you still had your designated land, but your life was roaming around the mountains, untethered. You had animals and crops, and that was how you subsisted, and then also how you maybe made money. And so it was a very free range lifestyle, and it allowed people that maybe they could just get an animal, start a farm, and there wasn't all this hassle and bureaucracy to try and pin people down or keep them from having this small piece of simple lifestyle that would let them enjoy their life more and live a better life. And instead, we have so many regulations. This is in Canada, of course, where, as far as I understand, you can't just, like, even in the city, let's say you're a very poor person in the city, so you want to get a couple chickens, and those couple chickens would maybe give you 4 eggs a day, and those 4 eggs a day would lower your household spending every month, because you would have that little bit of food, and then a couple times a year, maybe you can slaughter a couple chickens and get the meat, or you keep them around and breed them, make chicks, and then you get more chickens that way. And so it's like a reproductive system, and so you have some sort of income or potentially just a food source in the city. You don't have to spend as much money, and I don't think it's legal to do that. So if you're within city limits, or your property size is like less than an acre or something, you can't have fowl, I think it's called. Like, you can't have like chickens or ducks or some sort of, a little pig or something like that, which makes a big difference for potentially someone being able to afford to live in the modern world. So, of course, there's a lot of nuance to all of this, and I don't want to go into all of it, and partially because I don't know that much about it, if I'm honest, just what I've kind of seen in day-to-day life. But it is a wider spread problem than anything that I've just talked about, and it's obviously just a product of population growth and industrialization, and trying to get everybody to live in populated areas and things like that, and the government's efforts to keep everybody kind of on the power grid and stuff like that. So definitely sort of unavoidable, especially with the population size we have on the planet right now, but it does feel like there are certain things that we could do to relax the system in specialized ways to make it easier in day-to-day life for homeless people to survive and thrive, and in more creative ways to live a fulfilling life. And it doesn't have to be making money, but it can be even something as simple as giving them a couple chickens and a couple goats and a little community out in the forest to take care of their animals, and yeah, so it doesn't have to be complicated, but it could be just something would be nice. And so if anybody has had these thoughts, has taken the time to think about this, or maybe actually knows more about this than I do, and maybe there are things out there that do this sort of thing that I've kind of been discussing a little bit in this video, then that would be really cool if someone could let me know about that, and I could look into it, or maybe help support it financially a little bit, or maybe I'll make a video about it, and it can become a little more widely known. That'd be really cool. So yeah, anybody who took the time to watch this, I really appreciate it, and take care.